We're good. We're good.
Oh, we're ready to roll.
We're ready to roll.
Okay.
So this is the big show this week.
Really big show this week.
The really big something or other this week. We are your boys. I'm Phil.
I'm Britt.
And this is us talking about things and shit and stuff and junk. So,
all kinds of things.
Yeah. So as we start every week with everything, what are you listening to this week?
What have I been listening to? As we all know, it changes from day to day, week to week. Pink Floyd's Animals was released earlier this week. It's the 41st anniversary release of the record. I believe it was on Tuesday, as a matter of fact. And
so in that respect, it's like the re-release of the movie The Jerk.
You could say that, maybe.
Did you ever see the...
Did that come out in 1977?
I don't remember when it came out, but I remember like on the 26th anniversary, they put out the 26th anniversary edition.
The 25th, yeah. The Jerk, yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It is called The Jerk after all.
Rather appropriate.
Appropriate.
And did you know that a friend of David Crosby's from Crosby, Stills and Nash, Carl Gottlieb, actually wrote the screenplay for The Jerk?
No, I didn't know that.
He also was instrumental in Jaws and also Caveman, that later starred Ringo Starr,
right,
and Dennis Quaid, surprisingly enough. And it was an actually dialogueless film. In other words, basically there wasn't any
Alana
pre-written.
Atuk.
Exactly. Atuk. But there was basically no dialogue to follow along. I mean, it's kind of going in style with, actual caveman communication, lack of, the English language or, proper communication, period.
Improper communication.
Yes.
And so you're going to hear a lot of this week because there's alcohol involved.
There's plentiful refreshments. You hear that, folks? That is the wonderful swirl and swish of
bourbon.
Good old bourbon whiskey from Kentucky.
Yes, actual Kentucky bourbon. Because bourbon doesn't come from, like champagne doesn't come from anywhere else but the Champagne district in France.
In France.
Oh, France.
Yeah, France.
Oh, we're getting pinky up this week, are we? Thank you, Britain.
Playing in a tent is paying the rent, like Uncle Frank says, down in France. Way down in France.
Well.
Way up into... But no, there's no Frank Zappa that's been listened to by myself this week. But however, I do have Pink Floyd, Animals, back to that. Listening to that. Actually, was playing the song itself on my acoustic guitar. Haven't really went through that song in a very long time.
The Animal song?
It's called Dogs.
Dogs?
Yeah, Dogs is the main song on the first side of the record.
What are you, fucking dog?
And, but, again, Roger Waters at this point.
Not that familiar with this one, I'll be honest. Animals was one that I never really got into.
Yeah.
So...
It's rather, it's kind of dry. It's kind of bitter, a little bit cynical. The music is great, of course, but a lot of Floyd fans and even some of the guys in the band themselves kind of mark the beginning of Waters' megalomania and control status of the band's music with this album. And, of course, this carried on into The Wall, which proceeded afterwards. And, of course, that was a very, huge effort on their part, and it was a big success. Later made into a film. But Animals...
Bobby G.
Animals really deals with political, social issues of that time. Still rings true today. Equating one with being in the workforce, this mirrors a little bit of George Orwell's Animal Farm as well. I think that's kind of where Waters got the concept with, the song titles in dogs, sheep, pigs. It's pretty
Are there any goats on this album?
Self-explanatory. There might have been some goats in between some of the because there are actual animal sound effects.
Oh, I have no doubt.
So it does kind of tie in with the concept itself. Since Dark Side of the Moon was such a huge success, the band kind of tacked on to a thematic cycle with each preceding record, Wish You Were Here.
In the timeline, then, this came after.
Well, this was after Dark Side. This was after Wish You Were Here. Two of the main pieces of the album, Dogs and Sheep, were actually worked up before or as they were working on the songs for Wish You Were Here. Originally, David Gilmour was more than content to include the early title of Dogs, which was known as Gotta Be Crazy. And Sheep was called Raving and Drooling. So these songs were already present within the Floyd set in 1974, a good year before the Wish You Were Here album. But Roger Waters didn't think that those songs fit in with Shine On You Crazy Diamonds' grand status. Of course, they wound up splitting that to bookend both sides of that record.
Which I know what... See, now, that album I am intimately familiar with because people may or may not know, I toured with a band for a while, and we did rip off in their entireties a few albums, and that was one of them.
And yes, Wish You Were Here happened to be one of them.
Wish You Were Here. Mm-hmm. That was our Floyd.
I bet that was kind of tough to pull off in spots.
A little lube.
A little lube, huh?
A little lube is as easy as anything else.
This is good as gold.
Yeah. There was the hardest part was getting the entirety of the shines together, because they are not short bits.
No,
they're very open, very well, especially for my part as a drummer, it was all about space. Mm-hmm. It wasn't about what you played; it was about what you didn't, right. And that's
less is more.
Less was definitely more, and I'm not sure if Less More was on that album or not, but his friend Just In Case was, and those are the parts that I played.
Just in case. Listen to you.
Yeah, no. But that was I love doing the album study like that because it gave you a chance to really immerse yourself in some parts.
Oh yeah,
and that was a lot of fun. And we had talked about doing a couple of others. My vote, which I was obviously outvoted, was for Dark Side because at that point, being the huge Fish fan that I am, everyone was trying to get them to do that for their Halloween stuff, which,
right.
If you don't know, it used to be every year, but Fish would, in general, on Halloween, rip off an entire album, and that was, their musical costume or whatever. So.
Now, did they do Dark Side of the Moon?
They did eventually do Dark Side.
Okay.
And they did it after Halloween one year, like a few days.
Okay.
After Halloween, if I'm remembering correctly. I don't even know. As with any band who's got, more than 30 years of history, you're in and out, you fall in and out. That was during an out period of mine. And I'd heard about it and I was like, really? They didn't even play it on Halloween? No, man, it was awesome, bro. Yeah. From what I understand, they played in Vegas that year and they did their regular thing, but they covered an album, but they didn't do Dark Side, and everybody was like so bummed. And then like 3 days later, when they were like up in Tahoe or something, they ripped it off.
Well, now I wonder if they had Wizard of the Oz playing in the background.
I don't know. That would have been a thing. Because
apparently, sometime in the late 90s, or maybe it was the mid 90s, I remember the whole, oh, dude, man, you play Wizard of the Oz with Dark Side of the Moon in the background, and it's just like, it just fits.
It's not Wizard of the Oz. It's The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, well, there's a guy down the street that just took over a new age store, and he kind of looks like a wizard, so,
Fucking, I'll never forget that. I've walked, there's a town close to us. I can bleep things. I keep forgetting about that. So I walk into the up in S-Town, and they're redoing the restaurant, and apparently it's an older guy that owns the place, and it's it's a lady that runs it, And I walked in and there were literally like 15 guys with beards, long gray beards down to like their belts. It was like a goddamn Gandalf convention. It's like, holy shit.
Was it November?
No, it was definitely in the summertime.
Oh, okay. I thought it was like for prostate cancer or something like that or whatever.
No, they're getting ready to remodel this place. And apparently they pulled in a bunch of people and they all pitched in. You know how hippies do with the commune thing.
Yeah.
That's
commies? I'll kill a commie in a second, dude. I don't trust him.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. Show took a dark turn.
Well, we are talking about animals.
Yeah, it's true.
Floyd.
Hey, way to tie it in. I'm not big on the whole communism thing. I realize a lot of people are, but that's beside the point. Or is it the point this week?
I've touched on points of it and studied it, but no, that's not really the point.
That's not. Well, I'm not at all familiar with the gremlins or the animals, so I have to defer on this one. So, what other fun stuff have you been listening to this week?
Well, listened to early Rolling Stones, Aftermath. This is kind of a watershed release for them at that point in time, 1965. They, started to branch out with different kinds of material. The songwriting team of Jagger Richards was strengthening with numbers like Mother's Little Helper, Lady Jane, which has a rather Renaissance-esque feel to it. Brian Jones played the dulcimer on that particular number.
Oh, my.
Keith plays a rather folksy acoustic guitar with Jagger's vocal. And arranger-writer Jack Nichey played the harpsichord on this particular number. Jack Nichey later was affiliated with arranging the horn and choir section, I believe, on You Can't Always Get What You Want, which was on the Let It Bleed album about 4 years down the road. Jack also has worked with several other artists within that meantime. He was close with Neil Young at one point, close enough to take his ex-wife.
Yeesh, okay.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a lot of fucking dark turns this week. Holy God.
Yeah, we got all kinds of, this is the Black Sunday portion of our podcast.
I guess this is what happens when you add alcohol, folks. Jesus.
Could be. But anyway, Aftermath is, something I haven't listened to in a while, and I actually popped it in early this morning just to check it out again. And it's an album that I really, really enjoyed. Like I said, the songwriting team of Jagger Richards is strengthening. It's getting better. They're not relying on outside material as on prior albums.
What year is this?
This is 1965.
Okay.
This is right after Satisfaction and all that kind of stuff.
So after Math, but before Algebra.
Exactly, before Algebra. Way before Algebra. Also, listening to a repackaged version of Bob Dylan and the Band's The Basement Tapes. This is the Basement Tapes Raw 2-disc edition. It's been purported that they recorded as many as 300 songs, and this was after Dylan had his motorcycle accident, which had laid him up for at least better part of a year and a half. He had...
Jeez, and this was before, like, video games and shit, so...
Oh, yeah. Way before that.
Read books.
Way before that.
And magazines.
So he started to... of course, the band back then weren't known as such. They were known as the Hawks, and they were his backup band when he went electric. So, having some downtime, recuperating, because I think he broke his neck or fractured it or something like that. So he was really out of action for a good while. And once he was able to become more mobilized and get around and start playing guitar again and everything, they rented a house in Woodstock, New York, preemptive of the famous Woodstock Festival, of course. That has nothing to do with that. But
that was the big pink house, right?
Yes, the big pink house.
I've been there.
Really?
Yeah, I've been there.
Okay.
I was doing the touring thing with the band. With my band.
I've heard since that they've actually, rented it out, or it's been bought by someone else. That sort of a thing.
That part of the property, I believe, yeah, if I remember correctly. I don't remember a lot of things. There's a lot of weed there. So.
Yeah. But so the Basement Tapes, this particular edition has at least 48 songs included. It's a little bit more than the original
48.
release.
Is that double disc?
This is a double disc, yes. They have a 5-disc edition that is the complete Basement Tapes.
Golly gee.
I opted for, naturally, the more condensed version, the more, consolidated version, if you will. And
I will.
A lot of these songs, kind of recall the Great American Songbook. I mean, there's Johnny Cash, Folsom Prison. They do a version of that. There's Quinn the Eskimo, which Bob originally wrote, was covered by Manfred Mann later on and became a hit for them. I believe Fish even covered Quinn the Eskimo.
Yes, I wasn't going to say anything, but since you brought it up, every time I'm at a show and they play Quinn the Eskimo, I either go take a piss, or if they're doing it for an encore, I just fucking leave.
Right.
Nothing against Bob Dylan or anything. It's just, like we have discussed before, some songs are just kind of overplayed.
Right.
I feel like, at least with Fish, Baker's Dozen, they've kind of gotten wet with a lot of songs. Mm-hmm. That being one.
Right.
So I don't need to hear Quinn the Eskimo anymore.
Right.
At least not by them.
But there's several songs on this collection that some other artists later on made famous. The Byrds covered "You Ain't Going Nowhere" when they went straight country for their "Sweetheart of the Rodeo" release. Thus abandoning their, folky psychedelic tinge that they had up to that point. They went complete country for that release.
Roger McGuinn himself gave me a copy of that album.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm. When I was working at the place in New York City, he came in and he was experiencing a kind of resurgence then. That would have been the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. And we were standing backstage just kind of waiting, between, we did 2 shows a night and waiting between shows. And he's standing there and he's like, so what do you think of Napster? And I was just like, well, it's kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, you get, at the time, the people were just downloading music for free.
Right.
So artists weren't getting shit.
Right. It still goes on.
Yeah, I know it still goes on. It doesn't happen on Napster. Napster's dead now. So.
Right.
But he actually really dug on it because before that, he was getting no play. He wasn't touring. He wasn't doing anything. He's like, because of Napster, he's like, I have a career again.
Right.
So he was way into it.
I mean, it can go both ways. I mean, Metallica got so much press for being outspoken about Napster. And, I think Lars Ulrich and James Hetfield eventually had to put, both feet in their mouths because they're so huge. Unlike
their dicks.
Eventually, It was something they're fighting that was just kind of a losing battle because, I mean, with the surge of digital media, the internet, wireless communication, it took one step further from, radio transmissions, of course. It's just kind of the wave of the future. So, and, eventually iTunes was created. And now there's other programs out there. Spotify is one source where you can actually stream an entire album, and you can buy it if you want to.
All licensed, by the way, now.
Of course, licensed, yes. But, of course it's regulated. It even took a lot of artists eventually to give in to iTunes. AC/DC held out for the longest time. King Crimson finally relented with iTunes. Before that, Robert Fripp completely disregarded it. He actually opened up his own store through King Crimson on a website, which is very cool to do. I can actually appreciate an artist going the extra mile if they have the ways and means to do so. Don't see a problem there if they don't want to follow along with the pack. The Beatles, of course, Paul McCartney or whoever controls the rights to the Beatles music now. I can't remember if Paul got it back or... One point I thought I heard that he bought everything back, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I'd have to check.
In an hour?
Exactly. Back.
Get it?
And, so I think things like Napster, that was just simply preemptive. It was just something that was eventually going to happen regardless. Something the industry certainly...
Well, and now the industry has caught up with it because we've gotten fucked by it already.
Yeah, exactly.
Podcast 1.
Because we probably could have done this freely years ago, but, with Ace and all that kind of stuff, But,
Well, yes, there would have been a time. Of course, though, we didn't have the digital means by which to record, which we are doing right now. Yes, you could record digitally then.
Back in those days, but back in those days for internet, it was dial-up. I don't know about DSL and that sort of thing being more lightning fast. I think we only had dial-up, if I'm not correct, or at least I know I did in early 2000.
Yeah, at that time. Yeah.
I mean, unless you were a top government official and you could afford the technology, most people, I think, like ourselves, were at the mercy of dial-up internet.
Absolutely. Yeah, I lived in New York City at the time, and I had dial-up, so that was fucking cutting edge, state of the art in like 2001.
Yeah, AOL and all that kind of stuff.
Dude, those fucking discs. There's a whole landfill just filled with those discs. Filled.
I guarantee it.
And there's another landfill in Arizona that is filled with the old ET cartridges from Atari.
They don't take that out to Silicon Valley? I thought they took it out to Silicon Valley and restructured all that stuff.
You mean recycled? No.
It's the land of technology, man. Come on.
Yeah.
Silicon Valley.
Yeah, that's...
or is it Silicon Sally? Nah, it's a strip club.
A little of both. Actually, I read something that a lot of these tech guys throw like big swinger parties out there.
Oh, they probably do.
No, they definitely do.
They can afford it.
But it makes it difficult for ladies in the business, especially ladies who are like entrepreneurs and starting, have their own startups. There's a good old boys club out there, and ladies are only invited to, get fucked.
Well, geeks got
literally and figuratively.
Geeks have to get their rocks off too, I guess,
Well, and I think that's the article I read. There's a lot of speculation about that was actually part of the reasoning of it is, these guys spend all their time in their mom's basement learning how to code and doing all that shit. And then, they finally get some kind of free reign to go out and do all this stuff. So what are you going to do? I couldn't get laid for 25 years. Now all of a sudden I'm a fucking billionaire. Yeah. I'm going to have a fucking swinger party.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Holy shit.
Just don't catch anything.
Well, and... that's the thing, and...
I mean, you can catch a Tory, but just don't catch a fucking gonorrhea.
I'm gonorrhea.
Yeah, I'm gonorrhea. Real bad.
Well, while we're talking about one of the rules is we try not to talk a lot before we get down here in front of the microphones, and that's because, that's where the good conversation happens, and... as I've said many a time, all a good podcast is a good conversation, and people want to listen. So we're going to delve into a little bit of personal stuff because I got to do some catching up with his Brittness here about what's been going on with his fucking Cadillac.
Oh, yes. The famous saga of the Cadillac continues.
Or as you call it, the couch.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, the couch.
one of my earliest memories of riding with Britt in the Cadillac, he's just like, very wistfully looking out the windshield and smoking his cigarette, and he's like, I love driving this thing. It's like driving a couch. Yeah. And ever since, that's what I've called it, the couch, the champagne couch.
That's right, man.
So what's going on with the Cadillac?
Well, because it's kind of impractical, it's a 1980, it's a V8, it'll eat some gas. For the time period, it was very nice, economical type of vehicle, but with the way gas is anymore. And
when gas was, 72 cents a gallon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I filled it up the other day. It was like $3.03 down in which is always cheaper where we live.
Right.
And it was $3.03 for the super ultra premium, which I try to keep good gas in it because of the engine quality. Apparently there is a auctioneer that works around here locally, and I had inquired about what he thought could possibly sell for it. He gave me a low price, of course, to barter with to begin, for anyone who would happily be interested or wanted to bid on it, between a price range of $3,500 to $4,500.
Now, to be clear, it's a 1980 Cadillac, right? It's
a 1980. Just turned 46,000 miles the other day when I was coming back through Virginia.
So less than 50,000 miles on it.
Exactly.
1980 Cadillac. Champagne is the color, right?
It's a beige. I call it champagne beige.
Yeah, so like a champagne color. Okay, so just so everyone knows roughly what we're speaking about. And so what was, did it go to auction?
It has not yet, because technically it's in my mother's name. So she's kind of tarrying around with it, and I gave her the information on Thursday or Friday, and I spoke to her today, which is Sunday, and she still can't make up her mind what she wants to do. At this point, about 5 or 6 years ago, we did have someone who was interested in it for a considerably larger amount. And once again, I pitched it off to her, and she screwed it up. The guy, I think, was turned off by it. And I don't blame him. I certainly wouldn't want to have to answer certain questions that she asked that doesn't really pertain to anything about the sale of the vehicle.
Like what?
It blows my mind. I think she asked him, do you have a garage to keep it in? What does it matter? Whoever buys it, as long as we're getting the money for it, it doesn't matter what they're going to do with it.
Yeah,
if they want to strip it of its parts and rebuild it and turn it into a Mad Max vehicle and have flamethrowers shooting out the back of it while they're going 80 miles an hour down the road, that's their business.
That is their business.
It has nothing to do with what we gave them. I mean, we're talking about a piece of machinery. It was my grandparents'. It does have some sentimental value to it. However, you have to kind of
put that aside,
take
especially
that out
if
of the
you
equation.
Especially if you want to get anything from it, because what usually happens with something like that is exactly what is happening with this car, which is, she has some kind of sentimental attachment to it because it belonged to her parents. They're both gone now. That's one of the last remaining things she has to connect her with them, physically.
But she doesn't utilize the vehicle. That's what kills me. I'm the one that actually utilizes it.
Yes.
I maintain it.
You are the driver of the couch.
I maintain it. I try to keep it. I've sourced it out to other inquiries, different options. They've done the same. They put an ad in the local paper. They got a few, bullshit calls, which of course you're going to get from time to time. They expect a little more than what I think the reality of it is, which kind of bothers me a bit. Sometimes they insult my intelligence. They don't think I know what I'm talking about. And when in fact I know more than they do. But that's okay.
On this one for sure. Because you had this thing sold. Well, you had it sold for what, like 65, 7, somewhere in that area, which is more than twice what you're going to get for it now. So,
never mind the fact that when my grandmother did have it back in the late 90s, there was a man that actually had been at the local body shop. I'm sorry, not body shop, but local garage that she used to take it to get oil changes done sporadically, the odd tire rotation, that sort of thing. And he did offer her $10,000 for it.
She should have taken it.
And well, at that time, it was one of the last things my grandfather had bought. And he had bought it for her. So again, she had the sentimental value of it back then.
That means
justifiable.
A little more for her.
Justifiable.
Now, I'm very much of the Yoda attitude when it comes to something like this, and that is, be able to let go of anything, because it's after everything, it's just a thing. And,
that's right.
And it's just a thing. You'll still have the memory of it even after it's gone.
You have the pictures of it. When it comes down to it, the longer you hang on to it, the less you're going to get out of it.
And that's exactly what has been happening. Exactly.
Personally, I wouldn't want to get rid of it. If I was in a better financial situation, I would have just bought it from her and be done with it. But
have a couch to drive.
But even for myself, it's not really practical. I'm not in a certain tax bracket or whatever where I can afford so much to have an extra vehicle hanging around. That's not really the case. My wife and I maintain our own vehicles as it is. So, with the fact at some point we will probably leave this area, so we need to start shedding our skin, as it were, of extra things that don't really need to have. It'll make it easier transition to not have as much baggage when we do leave.
So, the saga continues.
Yes, the saga. We might fill you in on it later, but
oh no, this is why I bring it up, because it does keep going. It just keeps on going, and there's been some pretty funny little stories that have come out of it. But that's the only reason I bring it up. It's for selfish reasons.
Yeah, not at all.
Because I'm sure there are other people out there who can relate, have certain similar situations in their lives. Like, oh yeah, that happened to me once.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well then, what was the bit of trivia that your wife was giving me? Somebody died, 2 people died, 3 people were born.
Oh yes. Well, I don't know about the birth part or whatever. I think she was just kind of spewing that one out. But
horse cockery.
On this day 2 years ago, 2 founders of Jefferson Airplane passed away on the same day, within hours of each other, which is a little ironic, I think. As we all know, Paul Kantner
I'm holding it.
The founder of Jefferson Airplane. My partner here doesn't care, and justifiably so. He had a bad experience with Mr. Kantner
Several,
years ago.
Actually. But anyway,
and
we'll get to that.
And the original lead singer of Jefferson Airplane, Signe Anderson, who was before Grace Slick. A lot of people seem to forget her. She is on their debut album, Jefferson Airplane Takes Off. And she was only in the band for a short amount of time, naturally. Of course, Grace wound up joining later, and they actually went up to a completely different level altogether. And so she certainly, I would say Signe was more of a catalyst for Grace than anything else. I think if Signe had stayed in the band, I don't know if the band would have elevated to the level that they did with Grace. But that being said, it's just ironic that 2 years ago on this day that 2 founding members passed away on the same day within hours of each other. I kind of find that very ironic. So I have been listening to some Jefferson Airplane, a little bit of Jefferson Starship too, as a matter of fact, and as well as one of the offshoot bands.
We built this shitty.
Well, the offshoot band, Paul left whenever Jefferson Starship were getting more commercial minded in the mid 80s. It was getting more difficult for him to find a place in the band because he was really more of a folk singer, songwriter type of figure. I mean, he liked rock music and could play it, of course, but it seemed like he was getting marginalized little by little out of his own band that he began. So once he decided to leave the group, not under good terms whatsoever, he forbade the band to use the moniker of Jefferson, and it was agreed that they could continue as Starship. And so in that response, Paul actually got in touch with Marty Balin, who was one of the original lead singers in the Airplane.
Love Marty, by the way.
And also in Jefferson Starship in the 70s, of course. And of course, we all know that he had made some big hits with them with the songs Miracles and Count on Me, 2 really beautiful, beautiful songs. Well constructed and written.
And he sang the shit out of them well into the 2000s. I know because I was there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I
got to see it happen.
Believe actually Marty got a Lifetime Achievement Award not too long ago through the Grammys, which, was kind of nice for them to at least recognize that.
Good for him.
I mean, as corporate and as insular as the Grammys are, or any kind of awards ceremony for that matter within the industry.
Nothing like watching a bunch of people try not to hurt themselves, jerking themselves off, and patting themselves on
the back. With golden gloves.
Well, when it comes to Britt has heard these stories before. So do you want to hear the good story, or you want to hear the bad story?
Well,
first.
I mean, if we're on the subject of Mr. Kantner, you might as well fire away with the negative.
All right, so we'll start with the bad one first. So the good story is with Marty, and I'll get to that. But Paul was a notorious prick when it came to putting up a live show. So basically what happened, and I'll make this as brief as I can because it still gets my blood up. All these years, this was in 2000, 2001. So they would come in, stroll in, all lax, and usually over an hour late every time.
Now,
without fail.
Now, was this the Starship? Was this Jefferson Starship?
This was,
or was this an offshoot project of theirs?
No, this was. They were under Jefferson They ran under Jefferson Starship when they came in.
Okay.
They had a different drummer. They had a different girl who was a singer. Everybody in the band was a sweetheart, and they profusely apologized for Paul and all his fucking tomfuckery. But basically, they would come in, all the band would set up, and they would get up on stage, and they would go through their sounds and everything, and they would get monitors together, and Paul just fucking refused to do it. He would not go on the stage until the show started. Would not go up there. And then, so he wouldn't do a sound check, refused to do a sound check. Then he would go out on stage, and before they play a fucking song, and he couldn't get his monitor together, and he would just berate our monitor engineer from the instant he got up there. Didn't you do anything about it? I was like, motherfucker, you didn't come out and do a sound check. What the fuck was I supposed to do? Mm-hmm. I get up there and I wrung it out as best I could, but I'm not you. I don't have your voice. I don't know how you speak. I don't know what your inflections are. I do this every fucking night for all these different people, and it's different every fucking time. And you just expect me to know. And it got to the point where this Scotty, I love you, bro, because you fucking went at him. Paul came out. It was a second show after doing nothing but bitching. He wouldn't even tell him how to fix it. All he would say was, "This is shit," and then would play another song. So he came out at the beginning of the second show, 2 shows a night now, and he was and he was berating him again. He was like, in front of a packed house, "Fuck you." Drops all the monitors, turned all the monitors off, and comes around the house like he's going to go on stage and kick Paul's ass.
Oh, wow.
We had guys who worked at the door as security or whatever. They grabbed him and drug him into the office to talk with the owner.
Wow. Who
eventually calmed him down and gave him his night's pay and told him to take a fucking walk.
Wow.
So they had their own front of house engineer. So our front of house engineer, Josh, went over there and he put up all the monitors except for Paul's. And that was Paul's punishment. He had to play the show without monitors at all.
Right.
Which I loved. So that was Paul being a dick. And, he was always backstage, like looking at us. The motherfucker had hair plugs and he was like always playing with his hair and shit. And we just, laugh at him behind his back and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's a shame, that people have to put on superstar airs like that, especially when the rest of the band are really nice people.
And then we're like, the rest of them we were like, we're sorry about him. He does this all the time. It's not you guys. It's
He's
him.
He's a prima donna.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Now, the flip side of that is Marty. Now, Marty provided me with the best first day on a job that I believe anybody has ever had. So my first day was Jefferson Starship. That was the first show I ever worked when I started this club in New York.
Oh, wow.
So, my buddy John is like, okay, so come on in and, I'll take you through the day and show you what goes on and, just hang back and watch what I do and, just pick it up as you go along. So first day, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm just hanging out there, watching things go down. Of course you have the whole Jefferson Starship, grew up because of you. I knew these fucks.
Right.
Grew up. So I didn't know at the time, but naturally they show up about 90 minutes late.
Oh, wow.
And they come in and Marty walks straight up to me and is like, "Fuck, man, is there anywhere around here I can smoke a fucking joint?"
That's awesome.
And I was like, Fortunately, John, the guy that hired me and was also a good friend, was like, come with me. You need to do this. So he proceeds to take us into a room that's about 4 foot square. You walk into this little closet and like to the left was the beer cooler and then there was the mic closet. And then the other wall was like the wall between us and the kitchen. And then there was a door that shut on that. So you shut that door and like the vent from the kitchen that took the smoke out, because this was in an NYU building right in the middle of Manhattan. So you shut this door and like the suction from the fan over in the kitchen would suck the air out of that. So you go in there and you shut the door and you would smoke and you blow the smoke into the little hole in the wall and it would take it at the top of the building or whatever. So it's me and Marty's not a tall guy. I'm not I'm 5'7", and Marty's a little shorter than me. I'd say he's probably 5'5", 5'6".
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So he comes in. He's like, "Oh, fuck. All right." So we get in there, and and my buddy John is a big dude. He's like 6'3", 6'4", big dude. So there's like 3 of us packed in this little 4 foot square. Go in there, shut the door. Marty pulls out a joint, fires it up, hands it to me. I'm like, yes, best first day of work ever. So I hit this thing and I turn and I give it to John. Then I turn back around to Marty. He's already got another one lit, has taken a hit and is handing that one to me. So I'm like, okay. So I take that one and I hit it and I go to hand it to John, and John's just shaking his head. I look over at Marty and he's got another one lit and he's just like, chill with it, man, chill with it.
That's a pro right there,
Oh,
bro.
totally. And
that is total pro
this
right there.
This wasn't like that kind of like that brown brickweed. Like this was some good Northern California shit.
Oh, I guarantee you.
Like,
man.
you know, these guys are rockers from the 60s. They know what the shit is.
He probably had a connection up in Mill Valley. I guarantee you, dude.
I don't know how they got it across
Guarantee you.
country or where they found it or what, but this was, to this day, still some of the best weed I've ever smoked.
Yeah, sure.
And I got fucking bazooted on my first day on the job ever because I floated around that fucking building for the next like 6 hours. Just fucking stupid. And, you know, with 3 joints going in that tiny little space and that one little hole to suck at, and we got fucking hotboxed in there, son.
Oh, my God.
And it was funny because, like, right before showtime, Marty was like, "Hey, man, you want to smoke another one?" I was like, "Fuck no." I was like, "Dude, you know what's up. Go ahead, go on in there." But I'm still fucking roasted from the first one, bro. Thank you.
Smoking
Thank
a long time, man.
But like every time, you know, and every time he would come in after that, always exchange like a knowing look or whatever. He'd just be like, you know, he'd grin and nod his head and then go about his business. And the rest of it, you know, the rest of it was just all professional stuff. But like our first interaction was always kind of like,
Yeah, man. That's great, man. That's really great.
And I did smoke with him a few times after that. Marty's great people. And, you know, as aggravated as Paul made me was as much of a loving feeling as Marty gave me.
It's like a yin and yang right there, you know?
Yeah, I mean, those guys were total balance. And Marty, just a fucking sweetheart of a man, and would just go out and like those few tunes that you're talking about and just would fucking knock them out of the park.
Yeah.
Every night. Yeah. There was a couple of runs where they did 2 shows a night, and he went out and did those songs every show and just fucking killed him every time.
Oh, yeah.
Dude is a pro.
Oh, yeah.
Pro.
Yeah.
And he always wanted to sing with a 57 instead of a 58. He's like, I like this. It makes it sound greasy. So
that's cool, man.
He liked that greasy sound.
Yeah, because the 57, you got to be pretty direct when you're singing into it. You can't go from the side or anything like that like you can with the 58.
No, you got to.
58's more rounded.
You got to eat that son of a bitch.
And
just the way they're essentially the same mic, with, you know, obviously the cosmetic differences on the outside,
right?
But the way I had it explained to me, sorry folks, I've been drinking whiskey here, but the way I've had it explained to me is you have to be a lot more direct with the 57 just because it's not as responsive as the 58,
right? And you know, most most amplifiers are usually I believe they utilize 57s because it's better to.
Well, that's. You know,
or is it a preference?
It is a preference thing, but like the 57 is like what they use in the bar. Like that's the bar band kind of thing. You get upwards of, you know, they're using ribbon mics and like some really fucking nice stuff.
Yeah.
I remember when Steve Vai came in, he didn't want to use anything but a ribbon mic on his. On his and actually you had that head here for quite a little bit too.
I did.
That's the story. We'll get into that Steve Vai story another time. That's a different story for a different day.
It's pretty cool, actually. Yes.
All right. So we've been listening to Animals. We've been listening to some Stones. You've been listening to Dylan with the band. You listen to anything else this week?
I did listen to another a version of Yes. I was checking out Yes songs. We might have touched on that last week. But this is highlights from 1972. This is a 2-disc, once again, a condensed collection. There is a 14-disc version of...
You like Campbell's soup, don't you?
Various shows from... Yeah, I'd love condensed, man. I really do. Got to get right to the point, man. Cut through all the bullshit. But this is a different recordings from different nights on the U.S. tour that Yes undertook in the... fall of 1972. So mostly highlights selections from the 3 albums that they had made up to that point. So we have songs from the Yes album, such as I've Seen All Good People, and
love that one.
Yours Is No Disgrace. We have from Fragile, we have Heart of the Sunrise, we have Roundabout, really excellent version of Roundabout on here. And then, of course, Close to the Edge. All 3 pieces are featured in their entirety on this. And it's, you know, captures Yes, I wouldn't say at the height of their live performance, but certainly a specific peak one has to remember that Bill Bruford had left the band and Alan White had replaced him. So
I was going to say, is this pre or post Bruford?
This is with Alan White.
Okay.
Alan was already in the band, I think, 5 months into it. So he's well seasoned here. His drum performances are impeccable.
I'm going to have to listen to that this week, I believe.
Absolutely. It's definitely worth checking out. I mean, I really do enjoy it.
I know you do, and you've said several things to me about it before, and I just, for whatever reason, have not.
Might have played it one night or two when we got a little schwilly there.
We tend to do that about once a week.
Yeah, we do it once a week.
If we can.
It's a thing.
It's a thing. That's right, cheers.
Yeah. Hey. So yeah.
So what's the rest of the lineup then?
Well, as I was getting to before we got off on the Kantner Ballin tangent there, back to that, Paul did put together, after he left Jefferson Starship and they became Starship, he decided to put together a project called KBC, which was a offshoot of
killer butt cunts.
Former members of it. Well, it could be that, if you would like.
He was definitely the cunt.
Yeah, he definitely, I would say, with a capital C. But actually, brought him together with Marty Ballin, which would be the B part, and C, Jack Cassidy, the bass player from Jefferson Airplane, surprisingly enough. The music on this is kind of the equivalent of the Starship at the time, which is a little odd to listen to upon reappraisal. They did have a couple of notable singles on that one album that they only put out together. I guess it would be their eponymous debut album, or sole debut album, rather. This was kind of a one-off thing, but they had two songs called Mariel and America. And again, you know, once you put it on, you listen to it, it is so drenched in the 80s, it's not even funny. It's actually kind of dated, and I feel kind of bad for the guys because I know they were trying to compete with what Starship was doing. Lyrically, it's very intelligent. Musically, it's very much of its time. It's very derivative, synth, and just has that 80s production, which I don't really like much.
I know you're not a fan.
Not a big fan of commercial 80s production.
Yeah. That's a very general thing. There's a lot of really well-produced stuff that came out of the 80s.
Oh, there is.
And some of the most popular stuff too.
Maybe I should say more arrangement-wise, the way the songs are arranged. Maybe that's what I'm getting at.
If you think about it now, what are some of the songs from the 80s that really hold up? You know, you got your Tears for Fears.
Well, you got
your Simple Minds. You got your
Power Station. I mean,
Power Station. Oh, I love me some Power Station.
Power Station with Robert Palmer and
some of the best drum sounds on an album ever.
And Tony Thompson. Yep.
Fuck yeah.
Well, that was kind of the whole. What's the word? Not impetus, but the inspiration for the Power Station was actually Tony Thompson wanted to do something more in a rock structure than what he had done with Nile Rodgers and Chic, and of course Bernard Edwards, who wound up producing the Power Stations record. So it was actually kind of a labor of love for Tony Thompson, really. And the two Taylor boys from Duran Duran, Roger and not Roger, John and Andy.
Yes,
Roger was the drummer. He was the other Taylor. But anyway,
Taylor made.
Yeah, Taylor made. And, of course, Robert Palmer it kind of gave his career another boost after the release of that album.
Yeah, because after that, he went on to do the whole Addicted to Love thing.
He did the Riptide album. Yep.
Right.
Yep. And, of course, Andy and John wound up guesting on that as well to help him out. Tony Thompson might have provided some drums, too. I'm not sure. I'll have to check the credits on that.
Yeah, that album is so well produced. Yeah, that's one of the better sounding albums of the decade.
But tying into 80s production values, arrangements, the way songs are written, Duran Duran, of course, is right next to that and is one of the reasons why I don't like the 80s. Some of the things that the Police did, really enjoy it instrumentally. You can hear it's kind of dated. Some of it is.
Some of it.
Don't Stand So Close to Me and that sort of thing, but still.
That has nothing to do with the instrumentation or the choice of sounds or anything.
No.
That's
But the production of the time, the way it
I
was
wouldn't even say it's so
arranged-
much the production. That's more of another thing we were talking about last week. Just one of those things that got to be overplayed. Didn't have so much to do with,
True.
necessarily the production of the sounds that they chose to use on the record. That one just got fucking overplayed.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
Much like Every Breath You Take.
Yes, another song that we never need to hear again.
Which actually, I've heard that Every Breath You Take, Sting's lyrics, I heard that he actually followed his ex-wife, or soon-to-be ex-wife, because at the time, he was going through a terrible separation, soon-to-be divorce. If you listen to the lyrics, it's, oh, can't you see you belong to me? How my poor heart aches with every step you take. There's an awful lot of speculation. Some people always thought that he wrote it within the minds of someone who was in the CIA or FBI, which is a very paranoid point of view to look at. But I could see that point of view if you really get into that song. I mean, basically, it's a love song. It's probably born of jealousy.
It's the original Stalker theme song.
Stalker theme song, right?
Totally.
So, but that's another song that is a prime example of being overkilled, overplayed. King of Pain is one that, for its day, was overplayed. I don't think it's played as often now.
Nowhere near. In
Every
fact,
once in a while when I hear it, it's like, oh, it's great to hear this one.
while we're talking about it, that's Synchronicity was one of the other albums that we played in its entirety.
Uh-huh.
We went round and round on whether or not to play a couple of the songs on that record just because they were so overplayed. It's like, if we're gonna do all but that one or those two, then we're not doing it.
But you did the entire album.
We did the entire album.
So you did Mother by Andy Summers.
Actually, we had a really interesting take on Mother. We played it as a blues song.
Okay.
Because the way it's set up is kind of like the phrasing of the lyrics, very blues.
Right.
So we played it as a straight blues tune.
Uh-huh.
In fact, I might be able to find some of that. Hold that thought for 1 second. Okay. We need to break here and refresh our drinks anyway. So, hold on for 1 second. I'll see if I can't find it. This we can play. Aha.
Yeah.
Yes. My take.
Yeah.
My take, motherfucker.
It's about time.
About time. All right. So I'm going to hit pause here. Found a little of this Mother thing of which I spake. This is how we did it.
This is Mother.
Mother.
Huh. Kooky. Nice. And this is you on lead vocals.
This is me singing.
Yeah.
And playing drums.
Going to Phil Collins here.
Yes. So this was the easiest way to do it, than to try to pull off the cacophony that's on that record.
Yeah, it's a little difficult to try to emulate that on stage. I don't know if they ever played that live on the Synchronicity tour in support of the album.
I
don't think they did.
It would surprise me.
It's possible.
It would surprise me if they had, in fact. Mm-hmm. And if they did, I want to hear how they did it.
Right.
Because
I'm sure we could possibly find it on YouTube, but we'd have to search the set lists of that year. And, bands like that, in those days, they probably didn't variate much from the set lists night by night.
Yeah, it's
because of the limited media back in those days and everything.
Well, yeah.
I'm sure that.
Well, not just that, but I mean, it's a product, and as with any product, you want it to be its best when it's on display.
Mm-hmm.
So, and believe me, when you play, there have been bands with which, we didn't have a lot of material, so we played the same songs in different arrangements every night. Sorry, I was kind of back far away from the mic there. My bad.
No, that's okay. I was just making sure the levels were...
No, well, we've been drinking now, so this is 2 podcasts, which I had the idea for combined into one. Maybe we should do this every week.
We're starting to swim.
Let's get drunk with Britt and Phil. We'll bullshit about some music and some about this and some about that. I like this plan better, actually.
Pull up a chair, get your cooler, and
Yeah, let's talk some bullshit and
get your beers here, man.
So I'm sure they have recognized that the talking has gotten louder.
Yes,
and
we can't hear any better.
And the speech has gotten slower. No. See, Britt has the most awesome belches, and I want to. This is the other reason for doing this. Some of these need to be gotten on tape.
Oh, it's going to happen.
Yes. Yeah. I also need to get a microphone in front of my cousin Joe.
Starting.
But not directly. More to the side.
Yes, we don't want to have a bunch of weird beer cockery all over the microphone, of course.
Yeah, I'm sure I can get another windscreen for this, but I
kind of want to keep what you got.
Yeah, I like it.
Put them on a Lobo, you know what I'm saying? Back. I see it now. I see it. It's God. It's God.
And about this.
I see God. From a distance, you can see all the world for you.
Oh, yeah, Britt
know.
has been drinking. He is singing. All right, well.
Getting in there, son.
I like where this is going. All right, so that was our take on Mother. So that's the nice tie-in there from part meh to part meh. Yeah. So now we're in part meh, but first we're in part meh.
And now let's get back to meh before we get too far from meh.
We have our overall meh.
Meh. Yeah.
The big meow. So, meow, what have you been listening to this week, man?
I'm looking at this Yes album, the progeny highlights from 72, and from afar it looks like fuzzy green foliage of some sort that seems rather familiar. If it were an album, I would be like, what is that on there? I think I should put it in a pipe and smoke it. But
your pipe and smoke it.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, there's been other things that I've tapped into over this week. Some oddities, not maybe specific whole discs or anything of that nature, but besides some of the airplane things that I might have tapped into per Paul Kantner and this, that, and the other, I did tap into one particular album he made with Grace Slick and ex-Quicksilver Messenger Service member David Freiberg, who later was instrumental in the formation of the Starship and remained with Paul even afterwards, and with Grace and Mickey Thomas when it became the Starship that everyone knew as We Built This City and all that kind of dreck. And they did a record together called Baron von Tollbooth and the Chrome Nun. Don't ask me how they came up with these album titles. I have no clue. Apparently, David Crosby dubbed Kantner Baron von Tollbooth. And Grace Slick said, "That's all Crosby." She says she has no idea where it came from. For her being the Chrome Nun, it was a sign of, strength, also shiny, Chrome Nun. I mean, who's ever heard of a Chrome Nun? No one, of course.
Heard of a nun that could suck the chrome off a never mind.
Well, Grace was famous for, she supposedly she slept with everybody in Jefferson Airplane except for Marty Balin. And Marty said, and Marty got pressed one time as saying, "I wouldn't let her blow me." And, that kind of says pretty much enough in itself there, what he thought. I
love Marty, man. Marty is my favorite.
Well, Marty did say, too, that several times, either in the airplane or even in Jefferson Starship, where after the show, they would go to the motel rooms, this, that, and the other. There was times when Grace was adamant knocking on Marty's door and basically her just kind of shouting through the wood that was separating them, why won't you fuck me? Why won't you fuck me? And Marty just kind of laughed it off and just like, the only thing that she could come up with is maybe he thinks I'm disgusting. I don't know.
You think?
But, you know.
You think, Grace? He just fucked the whole band. He was last in line. If I was the last guy, I would be like, yeah, no. I would do the same thing. The exact same. This is why I love Marty. Yeah. I don't think just because he fucking blew smoke up my ass. Jesus.
But Grace, Grace early on in the band, she actually hooked up with the drummer Spencer Dryden. And, they were kind of an item there for a little while. As they got more popular, of course, she kind of gravitated, I think, eventually towards Paul. Of course, her and Paul did have, a child together, China, who wound up being on the front album cover of their collaborative effort called Sunfighter, which featured Jerry Garcia. Jerry actually guested on several of the projects that they released in between the Airplane albums and before the formation of Jefferson Starship.
Yeah, they come from the same window.
So, yes, Jerry actually was really good friends with Paul and Grace and played guitar, also played pedal steel guitar, which, of course, he provided the pedal steel to Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young's Teach Your Children. Very talented.
That's Jerry on that?
Jerry plays the pedal steel on that.
I never knew that.
Yep, he sure does.
I should have.
Yep.
I mean,
I'm surprised you didn't know that.
No, that's, I mean, and, hanging around with you, that's probably one of those things that you told me and I was just like, wee.
Yeah, right.
Kind of like right now.
Like, whoa, man, where's that coming from, dude? But yeah, I mean, Jerry was just, he could have done so much more if he'd allowed himself, I think. I love what he did with the Dead. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he was the uncertified leader of the band, and he didn't really enjoy that pressure, I think, to be considered the central focus of the group. It just kind of happened because of his, in his youth, in the early, stages of the band, and as they grew, obviously he was the source of inspiration. Much like any central figure would be for a major group. I mean, usually they look to the guitar player. They look to perhaps maybe the keyboard player. But most of the time, guitar always seems to stand out first and foremost. People can identify it with immediately. It cuts through the sound spectrum. It's a very melodic instrument, of course. But yeah, I mean, Jerry, should have done more collaborative things. I mean, he did do an awful lot of different jams. People from Tony Rice to Merle Saunders. It's just a shame that he couldn't have done maybe just a little more with his time. Haven't really tapped into any kind of heavy metal or anything like that. Sometimes, every once in a while, I'm actually wearing right now a Motorhead t-shirt. So
I've actually been kind of waiting for some metal to show up.
Yeah.
Just now that we talk about it, it'll probably happen.
Oh, it's definitely going to manifest. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But for now, I'm still under the more softer melodic side of things of life.
This is for the record. This is the Britt that I like most, as the guy who's kind of looking for that good melody or good mix. It just as someone who's done a lot of recording, I feel like I appreciate a lot of records for different reasons than you do, because, I know what it takes to get some of those sounds.
Sure.
Like I actually know what it takes to get some of those sounds.
Yeah, it's
not
hard.
that I could do it, or, I could do it. I just couldn't do it well.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's so much that. I think it's just maybe sometimes it's circumstance. So maybe people are of their time. There is
I'm not even talking about performances. I'm just talking about sounds.
Okay.
Getting good quality sounds.
Right.
That is what record production is.
I will say, going back to Pink Floyd and
yes,
just a little bit ago, I was playing on my acoustic some of the chords to the beginning of the track Dogs. And a mutual friend of ours, I talked to him on the phone today, Jonathan actually caught up with him a little bit and talked to him. Hey
the
D,
Love Rhino.
The Love Rhino. That's right. That's what he was known in common circles back in the day. But I was just kind of telling him about, the whole collective of Pink Floyd and the construction of that song. Playing that song on acoustic guitar, it really dawns on you that, yes, you can perhaps arrange it so that it's completely feasible as a song if you rearrange it a bit for an acoustic setting. But that song essentially was written with all four members involved in the band. The keyboards come right into play. David Gilmour layers his guitar parts. There's at least 3 different guitar parts on it. There's a lead guitar, there's an acoustic guitar, and there's a rhythm track. Roger Waters' bass playing, Nick Mason's drums, of course, to keep the rhythm steady and whatnot. But
what a fantastic band!
But everything they put into it, I mean, I think sometimes people take Pink Floyd for granted. I mean, I know I've been guilty of it several times.
Me too. I think to truly really appreciate a band, you do have to take them for granted just a little bit at some point. And then, there's that one time where it really strikes you as like, yeah, the rest kind of comes and I have my moments with it, but this has stayed. This resonates.
Yeah.
And that's really all we're talking about here.
Yeah. And, the art of reevaluation.
Not just the music, but of yourself.
Right.
Yes.
Because you have to remind yourself of some of these songs and some of these bands and some of these albums that you collect over time, and rediscovering some things, even if it's so overplayed, like Led Zeppelin 4 or Fleetwood Mac's Rumors or what have you. I mean, any popular album of your choice.
I'm glad you bring up Fleetwood Mac because while you were talking about the whole thing with Grace and Marty, I was just like, I wonder who fucked who in the Mac.
Well, during the Rumors album, oddly enough, it was rumored that Buckingham and Nicks were done as a couple, because when they joined a few years previous, that they were kind of a package deal. Because they were out as
Pardon the obvious pun.
And yeah, they were a package deal, all right. But
they were rolling the packages together.
Yeah. But supposedly, Christine and John McVie were parting of ways. It's never been purported that Lindsey Buckingham and Christine hooked up. That's still a matter of debate, but we do know for sure that Mick Fleetwood and Stevie were an item for a little while during the recording of those of that session.
That was the one
record.
I knew about.
Yes. It's always been, like I said, it's always been a matter of debate whether or not Christine and Lindsey hooked up. We do know that Christine was involved with Dennis Wilson from the Beach Boys.
Oh.
She was involved with him maybe a little after that album, maybe before Tusk, which I love Tusk personally. I love that record. And unfortunately, I don't have enough time right now to get into the crux of that one. We will save that for another future cast.
You're just going to have to listen. You're going to have to listen to it. That's what it comes down to.
That album, oh my God. And you need to listen to that album because it really is extraordinary.
Yeah, I need to re-listen.
But anyhow, yes, she was involved with Dennis Wilson. Her marriage to John was falling apart during the Rumors time. So there was some controversy going on, some drama within the group. But you know what? The proof is in the pudding of that record. I mean, as much as it pains me to say it, because I'm not a big fan of Buckingham Nicks era Fleetwood Mac, but like I said, Tusk is the one album that I really do enjoy to listen to.
Never been a fan, so that's why he's telling me.
Right.
Yeah. But I've heard it. I've heard it.
Right.
You've made me listen to it.
Things of that nature. Sometimes behind the scenes of making of records, there's a lot of friction involved, but you know what? That friction and that tension ultimately brings great results.
It can.
That's important for artists to be able to work within that kind of atmosphere. It pushes the music to become much more powerful. Right. And, we got a little tilt there on the pinball screen folks.
I put the, we're hooked up to this coffee table. It's a coffee table from the early 70s. I know this for a reason. Basically, it's a 2-level coffee table or a stand. So there's like a little leg and about, 2 feet, a foot and a half off the floor. You got one level. And then there's like another foot of like, wooden support or whatever. And then there's another level on top. So it's like a 2-level end table, I guess you'd call it. I remember as a very, very small child standing up and having my hands at shoulder level up on the bottom of this and looking through the middle of it. One of my earliest memories. Wow. That's why I keep this table.
That's
so.
Now, see, that's a good sentimental thing to have.
Well, it's I think it's, I'll tell you exactly why I did this. And I thought maybe we'd get beyond first couple episodes before I brought it up, but here it is. This table is from the beginning of my life. Everything I'm doing with it now is from the latest part of my life.
Right.
So, it's just funny how things kind of stay in your orbit like that.
Right.
This is one of those things that I kind of always wanted around. I like it. And one day I am going to refinish it. I'm going to sand it up nice. I mean, it's a nice little table.
I mean, I don't know if they, because the classic term is, how do you build a table? You have to make a chair first, right? Isn't that how it's constructed?
It's a tall chair without the back.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's essentially what.
I mean, everything is some version or a chair. Everything is a version of a chair, which is supposedly invented before the table.
Right.
Because you got to sit somewhere.
Right.
Always.
Right.
From the beginning of this genetic.
I mean, you could use a stack of books or something like that, or
but
whatever.
That's still a chair. I mean, you're always
a chair.
Cave people sat. Everybody sits. So I'd say the first one was a chair. Table came later for sure.
I would think so, yeah.
When the bills started showing up, got to have the place set the bills. Be like, fuck this. I'm going to put this over here for now.
Right.
Stack of them. Go. Yeah. If you're an adult, you get that. All right, so I'm pretty well soupy. How about you, bud?
I'm getting in there.
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty tuned in right now.
Getting in there.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time now before someone says something stupid and we have to end this thing.
No, we'll let it flow. I did check out. This is unrelated, but I'm still listening to it. I have a DVD of Blind Faith, which was a sort of supergroup offshoot. Ginger Baker and Eric Clapton had just emerged from the dissolved formation of Cream.
Is this something you've been listening to this week?
And yes. And Steve Winwood, of course, was involved, and Rick Gretsch, bass player from a band called Family, got together and did a free show in Hyde Park in London in the summer of 1969. And I did watch this DVD the other night. It was a couple nights ago, and wanted to check out and see why I didn't really get into it the first time around. Really good performance. It's something different. I can kind of understand why Blind Faith didn't really succeed. They had some really good material, like Can't Find My Way Home. They covered a Buddy Holly tune called Well, All Right.
Oh, all right.
They also featured a couple of songs that they did a cover of the Rolling Stones' Under My Thumb, which is from the Aftermath album that I was listening to a little bit earlier and was talking about.
Yes, Aftermath.
But I actually found Blind Faith to be rather interesting little side step.
Wait, did you just say they're from the same window in time, or was that in my brain?
No, they're from the same window in time between Cream and Traffic.
Like what year?
1969.
All right. Did you say that already?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm spacing out.
That's okay. That's okay. But
I'm starting to free associate, which means that the liquor's got me tuned in.
Yeah.
Oh, and yeah.
But that was something else to check
Jimmy
out.
Leahy is now no longer with us.
Yes, Mr. Leahy.
In honor of the liquor.
Yes.
Yes.
But yes, Blind Faith. Interesting side project. It turned out to be a side project. Unfortunately, there could have been more potential there for everyone that was involved. But it was a nice little side note. Clapton, I think, wanted to kind of get away from the guitar god status that he achieved in Cream. Ginger Baker, however, because of his personality, and Ginger's a really good drummer, very good drummer. A lot of people consider him better than Bonham and Keith Moon, for example. I personally think they're all in the same league there, but Steve Winwood, once again, as far as I'm concerned, Steve Winwood at that period of time could do no wrong. He could
still one of the most talented dudes in rock and roll.
Yeah, amazing singer. I mean, for an English guy, it's still hard for me to believe that kind of a voice comes out of him. He has that white, blue-eyed soul sound.
There's only one other band that I think of when I think of blue-eyed soul.
What's that?
Hall & Oates.
Yeah?
Yeah. That's the 80s blue-eyed soul.
Yeah, Daryl Hall did something with Robert Fripp.
When was this?
This was in not too much longer after Hall & Oates split.
Really? Mm-hmm. Which would have been what? Like 80s?
Late 80s,
88?
early 90s, before he reformed Crimson in 94, I think. 93, 94. Because, Crimson split for almost 10 years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Between 1985 and 95.
Yes.
So he did do, and he also did some projects with Andy Summers from The Police during that time. But he did make a record with Daryl Hall, and I haven't checked it out yet, but I want to get it. It's on my wish list.
Is it a...
of several titles. But, yeah.
Hey, made me forget my question. Damn it. Is it more to one of their end of the pool? Like, is it closer to like the Blue-Eyed Soul kind of pop thing, or is it?
It is actually closer to Fripp's side of
this
music.
Interests me. So yes, I see why this is high on your list. All
yes,
right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and I couldn't believe it because when I saw it, and I don't know if it was on, I think it was when I was on the Amazon forums back when they still had the forums, and I was chatting with a few people, and somebody pointed out the fact that Daryl Hall had done something with Robert Fripp, and I said, same Daryl Hall that was in Hall & Oates? I was like, are you kidding me? He's like, I am dead serious. I'm like, okay, I'll check it out. Because I couldn't believe it. I mean, it knocked me for a loop. Because
no kid.
I'm thinking Private Eyes, I'm thinking Maneater, and I'm thinking there's no way that
all good
these
stuff,
guys,
by the way.
whatever.
All good stuff.
It is good stuff.
All good stuff.
But
I don't want to have not with that mustache in that band. There's no way you can say a bad thing about them. No fucking way. Yeah. That's some Magnum PI shit right there.
Yeah,
that's some
right.
very That's
it's
a very
definitely
fucking,
Magnum PI.
That's
right.
a Tom Selleck mustache if ever there was one.
Yo, Higgy baby.
Oh shit, we just went there. Well, that's definitely getting bleeped. Sorry folks, it's going to be an inside joke and you're going to be on the outside.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll start to call this stuff right now for the when we're dead. Be like, this is all the horse shit that we couldn't put in the show.
Yeah, that's the outtakes. The outtakes, you fucking cum ball.
Oh shit! It is seriously, it is my dream. Seriously,
if you will, it, dude. It is his dream.
It is my dream to die in front of this microphone. It is now my dream. I want to laugh so hard I have a fucking aneurysm and drop right dead. Yeah, when it happens, you're not gonna laugh, so laugh now.
The state of Phil.
I love a good laugh.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, going way back, folks, boomerang, you know what I'm saying?
We drank the Leahy, we may as well get some in there.
Going back to, you got it, man. Going back to the Hall and Fripp union.
It just sounds weird to say it.
It is. It's very odd, man. I mean, we'll look it up on YouTube afterwards. But,
I think it's
check it out.
It should be Fripp and Hall. Okay, so yeah, if there's something on YouTube, I'll leave it in the description.
Yeah. Like I said, that's something else that I want to check out. And like I said, I mean, I did actually listen to a few things, and I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe that this could be possible. Because I always associated Daryl Hall with, that style of music that he and John Oates created together.
Yeah, the whole late 70s, early 80s Blue-Eyed Soul. And man, there's some fantastic fucking shit that those dudes made.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's a ton of it.
But you got to remember, when they started, they were actually more of like a folk singer-songwriter type of
so was the Dead
conglomeration.
Yeah, so that was kind of a thing.
They tapped into something that was more commercially viable because they wanted to make a career naturally. Same thing with Journey.
Somehow.
Same thing with Journey. When Journey started, Greg Rowley and Neil Schon were, kind of, they had left Santana and they wanted to do something on their own. So they got together with some other like-minded musicians, and they were actually really, by modern day standards, a jam band back in those days. They really were. They really had some interesting stuff. So
That's
in the evolution of things,
now I got to get into these guys.
that's how they got Steve Perry, because the record company that they had signed a deal with, I think it was Columbia at the time, and it was a do or die situation. It was after the third album. They were getting ready to drop him because they said, well, you're not really selling enough units. So nowadays, if you don't make it with your first album, you're history, you know. I mean, but unless you put out your own stuff.
Yeah, you're relegated to the internet no matter what.
Right. So all you young guys, learn everything you can do with the internet and then make up something new, and then you'll be somewhere. That's really what it takes. And if you don't know somebody, I mean, you know, because a lot of the people, I mean, let's face it, a lot of the people that tap into the commercial pop industry knows somebody who down here, down the line or whatever, and they're just lucky, beautiful people that just happen to know the right connection.
Oh yeah, because there are no more ugly musicians. They don't exist anymore.
No. And especially with the advent of TV shows like The Idol, was it American Idol, The Voice, that kind of stuff. I mean, you know.
America's Got Talent.
I mean, yeah, you know, I mean, you know, isn't it true that Taylor Swift, her claim to fame was like American Idol or something like that?
I don't know. I thought her claim to fame was her legs. She certainly thinks that.
Well, it could be that.
She certainly thinks, apparently.
But I thought she was one of those. You know, yeah. But I thought she was one of those that, you know, that was how she got into the big leagues, was because of that, you know, which, I mean, is all fine and well, but
I don't know how, I don't care enough to know how she got famous.
Yeah.
She obviously is, and obviously she's beautiful. So that's all it takes. And you really don't have to be any kind of a singer. They can glitz it. Trust me, folks, I'm doing audio production doing this shit.
Yeah, well, we're not auto-tuned, so, you know, be advised there. You know.
That's funny you should mention that. I might just have to throw that in because I found a plugin for Audacity that does that kind of shit.
Oh, yeah?
So maybe I'll auto-tune that shit just to fucking say that I did.
It's the new Mother Nature taking over. It's the new splendid lady that you're auto-tuned.
It's the, huh?
Yeah. What?
Dude, don't get him started.
Yeah. Don't get him started. Know what I'm saying? Know what I'm saying?
Know what I'm saying?
Know what I'm saying? Know what I'm saying?
Oh man, I'm pretty well tuned in. I don't think I don't think we should do this anymore. We've already said so we need to get, I think we need to be done here.
Cocksucker.
What are we at? That's fine. You know me? Shit.
All right, folks.
So, I think that's the Britt and Phil show for this week. I'm Britt.
I'm Phil.
Or we got that backwards, but whatever.
That's okay.
Thanks, buddy.
We can improvise.
And he's Britt. I'm Phil. And
God bless you, San Diego.
I know what it was. So we got the what's after Mother on the album?
The Faja?
No.
Oh.
After Mother?
I believe Synchronicity does.
Nope.
Miss Gradenko.
Yep.
Is anybody alive in there?
I got all of that. Take us out with this.
Hell yeah.
All right. Yeah, again, I'm Phil.
I'm Britt.
We'll talk to you guys next week.
Take care, y'all.